right, everybody. Thank you for another episode of Money Talks, Love Listens with my amazing co-host, Jim. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to talk to our next guest. We are now officially in December. I can't believe this. Last month, people. This, whatever year we got going on. But, we are going to close out the year, I think, on a positive note, because we are all blessed enough to be alive, be healthy, and still hopefully doing whatever your passion is. So if you are not familiar with this podcast, this is the podcast where we talk about the two things you're not supposed to talk about at the dinner table, which is sex, love, and money. Not necessarily in that order, but that is what this show is about. So our guest today is a love coach named Jerica Jech out of Seattle, Washington. I almost said California because California is in my brain. So my apologies. But very quickly, I would love to turn it over to my co-host, Jim, to talk more about what he does in finances, or to help small businesses in their finances.
Thank you. Yes, one more month to go in 2020. Hang on. So a little bit about me. I'm a vice president of a private wealth management firm in Chicago called THG Financial Services. And what we do is we help individuals, business owners, and family members become financially secure. And what we do is we really target risk management, wealth accumulation, and wealth disbursement. And the main focus is just to make sure we give clientele a good experience through their life cycle, because their journey is part of our journey. And we want to make sure they can reach the end zone when they can. So my main focus is to learn about people and figure out a game plan, give them a roadmap so they can become financially secure.
Perfect. We all need that, especially in a pandemic where, everything is uncertain. As my grandmother used to say, money is the one thing that is certain. Either you have it or you don't. She's a mathematician, so that's why she would say something like that. But I would love to kind of go in a different direction in the beginning and talk more about the one thing that has been on my brain, mainly because I run a dating company. And especially during the holidays, I get very, 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 very busy, as most people in the dating aspect do, because it starts to be like, oh, it's a magical time, but I don't have anybody. And then on top of that, there's COVID. So people obviously have been in their homes a lot longer than normal. And I think everyone is kind of feeling the loneliness, as well as a lot of people, unfortunately, have broken up and maybe are looking to get back out there. And since we're in a completely different landscape, it's a little different in terms of the dating aspect. So Jerica, I want to ask, as I do with all our guests, how did you get started? Especially kind of, in this field of love and dating and relationships, that I think a lot of people hear what a dating coach is. They don't really understand it. If you're watching this or listening to this, you should know what it is. But if you don't, Jerica, if you can give kind of a quick explanation of what a dating coach does, as well as how you kind of got into this field.
Well, I, like you, and probably like a lot of people, didn't know what a dating coach was either until I kind of stumbled into needing one. So I found myself unexpectedly divorced at 48, and then started a big personal growth journey of healing, but also, wanting to get myself out there, also wanting to understand like what went wrong. Yeah. And what can I do differently? I want to, write a different story. And that's kind of how I stumbled into, needing a dating coach myself. I actually got a coach she kind of helped me heal from the divorce and get started in dating both. And it's kind of funny because from that journey, I didn't initially want to become a dating coach immediately. But through all the personal development I was doing, I decided to become a life coach. So I got certified as a life coach. And then basically through the program I was going into, they have you specialize. And it's funny because I found myself drawn to being a dating coach, a love coach. And at the beginning, I was like, well, that's like embarrassing, I don't know, I couldn't do that. And I was kind of like wanting to hold myself back, but it's like my heart just kept getting drawn to it. And I realized I had like so much to say, and I just had so much passion for it. And that's where in life you eventually kind of have to give in, I guess, to your inner passions. And so I just haven't been able to stop talking about it ever since.
You don't have to stop talking about it, especially now. I feel like that is kind of a story. I love your journey and like what obviously I know the positive part of after a breakup, especially after a divorce. Divorce is, we all know, it's very hard. I myself have gone through a divorce when I was very, very young and learned a lot. And now I found another partner, but it took a very long time to do that. But at the same aspect, there is life after divorce. So, and you can find love again at any age. And I think it gets better. I don't know if you kind of share that agreement. Do you think it gets better as you get older?
I think it's definitely different. I do work with a lot of women who are over 40, and I do think there are some different goals. Like, most of the women I work with, if you're over 40, you're probably not looking for, building a nest and having kids and all of that kind of thing. So it does kind of change. But there's definitely hope. There's definitely hope. So my story, I didn't tell the second part of the story, but divorced at 48, engaged at 50. So I was able to find a new partner actually through online dating. I don't know if we'll dive into that, but that's definitely, we were talking about 2020 and COVID and everything. I mean, you don't pass any germs through, so it is on the rise.
I feel like even like before COVID hit, I myself have dated obviously online, met my partner online. I met my first husband online. I think I've mainly only dated online. I'm not sure. Think about this. But I knew other people, even seniors who had met online. And the conversation of like, oh, you met someone online. I remember the first person I met online, everyone was like, oh, they could be a psycho and they could hack you up in pieces. Are you sure you want to do this? Versus now, I feel like it's the opposite. If you don't meet someone online, they're like, how did you meet this? Or like, meet in person? Like, how does this happen?
What's this real life thing?
Right. What is that? I don't know what that is. How do you, as we were talking a little bit about online dating, have you noticed that kind of shift? Obviously, now we're fully into, you're meeting someone, whether it's a virtual event or a dating app, you're meeting someone, obviously, it's the first time through some virtual setting. How do you see, like, how maybe before this, if you had said you met someone online, they might give you kind of a weird look, especially 10 years ago, versus now it's, become the norm? And kind of, I know this is a two-part question, where do you think is going next? Or like the next step?
I think, wow, I mean, this year, geez, what is this post-COVID era going to be for all of us? It's really interesting. It's like all of a sudden, everyone knows what Zoom is. Everyone can do it. Whereas even a year ago, you'd be explaining to people, so it's this app where you video, now everyone does it. So I think it will push us even more into that. And I think that, there's positives and negatives to that. So just like online dating is a tool, video dating, if you're going to do that, whether it's FaceTime or Zoom or whatever you're going to use, is also just a tool. So online dating isn't necessarily good or bad. It's like, how do you use this tool? And the same thing with video dating. But I think it's a cool way of getting to quickly kind of meet people. Because if you're going to, like, if you start kind of chatting and messaging with somebody online, you can move quickly to a video date, and then you can just kind of decide, well, not a match, or okay, maybe we want to meet in person.
Right.
So I think it can be a nice intermediate step that's just makes it more easy, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's definitely, it's numbers are the game, everybody. Tell people, like, just, now I feel it's easier. I'm not saying, spread yourself thin, but you can date probably up to 4 people right now. It's not that difficult. And then, I always laugh and say it's like love games, Hunger Game love games, where there's only one winner at the end. So like only one is going to be left standing. And you know, hopefully it's the one you think. If it's not, it's going to be somebody. Do you think that because we have to start now, especially with the virtual dating, and you know, that's a virtual Zoom call, a virtual Skype call, however you start with the first interaction, do you think that courtship is making its way back in? I keep seeing all the articles that courtship is like the new kind of dating, or like, you know, vintage style dating is coming back. How do you feel about kind of courtship?
I mean, I do think this whole social distancing and the fear people have to meet people in, you know, face to face has slowed things down. And I do think that's a real positive, because it's one of the things I think people really complain about a lot of times with online dating is they say like things go too fast, like artificially fast. And so we're kind of forced to slow down. And, you know, I always say, like, you know, you talked about the numbers game, which a lot of women kind of cringe in horror, you know, they don't want to do that. But dating is supposed to be fun and light and open and just, you know, not serious. And so, you know, take your time and enjoy, you know, and laugh, and it's funny and awkward and, you know, hopefully fun through the awkwardness.
Yeah. I mean, just meet somebody every day. Like, this is the easiest thing to do. I tell you, like, how do you not meet someone new every day at this point? Like, all you gotta do is open your phone. Like, that's the easiest thing about it.
It is, absolutely.
A lot of women, I especially now, I keep getting this message over and over again, where women will say, I keep finding people, but I don't find anybody for me. Or I can't find someone that, you know, resembles the type of guy I'm supposed to have, and all these kind of, I call it the fairy tale illusion, where for some reason these women think like guys are going to ride on a, you know, some car, I was going to say a horse, and magically improve their lives. And I'm like, that's not reality. But a lot of people are just like, I want someone that, you know, is honest, is not going to catfish me, and hopefully shares the same values. But a lot of people start online, but it doesn't go anywhere. And I think there's kind of that burnout that happens. How do people actually, and in this case, I'm going to just talk about women, really find someone that, you know, is true and not a liar? These aren't my words. But
so this is the magic question, and this is actually what dating is supposed to be. I think people think dating means you're like with somebody.
Yeah.
But dating is actually the process of like sifting through. And you already mentioned, you know, meet lots of people. It's a numbers game. So you can't just like, you can't be swiping for, you know, guy who is honest. Like, that doesn't work. So what you have to do is meet lots of guys, and then this slow, remember we already talked about slow, this slow dating phase of slowly observing them, observing their behavior. What do they do? Nobody can just tell you, again, even if they say in their, you know, dating profile, I'm honest, like that means nothing. You have to see their behavior over time, slow it down. You can be chatting with different people and slow it down and observe them. And this is where I think a lot of women go wrong, because they want to skip over this process. They want to just meet somebody and then be in a relationship. Yeah. And that's the big problem there, is they're skipping over the vetting process, kind of. It's like, well, you just went with somebody you didn't even know. You kind of then committed yourself to this person, assuming they were everything on your list, but you didn't check into any of that.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing is women will say, you know, that they can't find a great guy. And then you start talking to them and you're like, well, how many men have you met in the last month? And they're like, one. Okay, in the last 6 months, and they'll have like 4. And it's like, so you're looking for a guy who's 1 in a million or 1 in 4? Like, which type of guy are you looking for? So, you know, it's having that realistic expectation. And I think you also hit the nail on the head when you're talking about fairy tales. So I used to think that, oh, this expectation has been set up by Disney and like, you know, animated children's movies. But I actually really started looking at just regular TV shows And if you really kind of look at them and analyze them, it pretty much does always happen in these regular scripted TV shows that like the guy moves in next door and then they, you know, they're taking the garbage out and they bump into each other and then, oh, you know, fireworks.
Yeah.
And so that's why people are just like, I'm not finding anybody. And it's like, are you meeting anyone? Like, he's probably actually not going to just move in next door. That's not reality.
No. I don't want to date my neighbor. That's weird. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I know it has happened, but no.
It's like dating somebody at work. What happens if it doesn't work out? You know, of course, in the movies, it always does because it's meant to be. You know,
you're gonna have to move. Like, in a pandemic, you're moving, okay?
Yeah, who knows where you live?
But you kind of hit a bunch of things on the nail, and I am gonna kind of go into this other topic because it does have to do with money and kind of let Jim take the reel. I found a lot of women, especially over 35, into the and mid 30s, even upper 30s. You know, women are killing it right now. There's so many women who have their own businesses. Our finances are great. You know, tons of education. But they're like, oh, I met this guy and, you know, he doesn't have a job. And I'm like, but I own 2 homes. And I'm like, no. Is he going to get a job? Like, is there a process?
Maybe she's going to give him a job.
Are you going to hire him? I don't know. But, and they're like, it didn't work out. I'm like, well, maybe you should find someone who has just as much as you or is striving to have even more, or they have more. And they're like, I never thought about that. And a lot of times they're like, well, I'm good. And they're not seeing, unfortunately, the partner, you know, as a debt where they're taking on someone who maybe is going to start like, you know, start crashing because they're depleting their resources to honestly take care of somebody, or they feel sorry for that person. And they're spending more time, you know, in this kind of mothering phase rather than actually building a relationship and hopefully building some kind of nest egg or wealth. Jim, do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, I do. I actually, this is an interesting process for me because I've never been on online dating before, so I don't even know what the heck I would do. So this is interesting to me.
Nobody else does either, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I meet a lot of people every day, and it's interesting to me, you know, that you mentioned that they seem to speed through the process, or nowadays speed through the process of the dating cycle. And I've actually noticed that a little bit, you know, since COVID started through the financial planning process. So the first question I would love to get your take on is what tips or what ideas have you shared or have couples shared with you when they want to go through the process, the dating process with their debt and income or their assets and liabilities? Or, you know, I remember dating for the first time, we talked about, you know, who's going to pay for this, or, you know, how you have in credit card debt, or are we going to buy a home or not? And I've noticed that a lot of people are just going through that very fast. And I'm wondering if it's going to come crashing down when they find out, you know, your husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or wife is unemployed and has a lot of debt. So what are your tips or what's some feedback that your clientele have given you?
That is, you know, definitely the whole money thing is a very tricky area. And it starts right from the first date, you know. And I guess my overarching thing would be it's about communication, and it is very uncomfortable. This and some of the other things that we've talked about is why, like, you need a coach. Some of the stuff that we were talking about before, or something like this, like, how do you get through these really difficult conversations? I'll just speak from personal experience a little bit. Like, money was definitely a big problem in my marriage. And right now, as I just got engaged, like, there's a lot of these conversations coming up with my fiance as we're talking about, like, what are we planning to do? Yeah. And again, kind of like, this is why it's so great to have a coach, because these things are not easy to talk about. There's a lot of deep feelings about it. I don't know if that's anything that I'm sure you see that with your clients, but people have, like, one of the first things that comes up is, like, people have different ways of spending money. They have different, I think you had like a financial way of putting it, but like, there's the spending the money, the saving the money, and something else, I forget. But, it's really deep. And some people will want to spend money on maybe that somebody else will consider to be frivolous, but to them, that's what's really important. And so trying to get somehow on the same page, I mean, money is one of the top reasons for divorce. Right. So I think it starts with communication, but you do have to find some kind of, I think, agreement or kind of system of how you do things. And then Gwen, you were talking, just to address a little bit on that, again, that to address a little bit what you were saying when you said that women will, like, they'll have a lot of money, but then they're dating somebody who doesn't.
Yeah.
And that just goes back to what we were talking about before. And it also goes back to like having a coach that is going to look at some of your inner stuff. It's like, why are you interested in a man who doesn't have a job?
Yeah.
That's a little bit weird. If you have properties and you have all these assets, like, why would that even, that would just be like not a match, right? Yeah. So there's something going on there that makes that a match. But I wish I had like an easier answer for you, Jim. But I guess I'm going to ask you for some answers. But I would say that communication and trying to get somehow on the same page, but you've got to say these things out loud to each other, and you've got to go through the uncomfortable conversations. What do you think? What have you seen?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you asked. Thank you for asking that. I mean, I would say communication is number one, and having a coach is 100% critical. I mean, when I'm in my clientele meetings, I become the therapist or the coach. And you know, it's interesting, depending on who you talk to and depending on who wants the control in the relationship. That's gonna be that's gonna be a second question I have for you, or a topic is, you know, whoever has the control, or the more, quote unquote, the control of the relationship, they want to talk about how much money they make, he or she. And then everyone else wants to talk about how much debt they have, and they frown upon that. So communication is critical, but also making sure everything is out in the open here and working through a game plan. I mean, everything that everyone has ever done, there's got to be a game plan. So, but you know, the second thing I wanted to ask you is control. So when you go through your coaching, do you find that it's a little more difficult to manage one or both people who may have type A personalities, or who want to have the control, or who want to speak on behalf of the other person for a lot more money? Because I come across that a lot.
Wow. Okay. Another giant question. I kind of speak now. This might get a little controversial, I guess, but I'll just give my perspective. As a Gen X woman, and you know, I grew up like, I am woman, hear me roar, and you know, anything a man can do, I can do better, and you know, I'm liberated and all that. And what I found as I gained experience and got older is like, if I can do everything better, but then I kind of ended up doing everything.
Yeah.
And I think this is actually fairly common for women, is like, and it has to kind of do with that control, but it's like, if you want to be in control, then you're doing the work. So do you want to be doing the work? Or do you want to let someone else do that work? So kind of for me is, and you know, the financial part is a whole nother piece that is hard. So I guess I'm speaking not necessarily financially, but I'm speaking a little bit more generally, that I finally realized with certain things, it's like, you know what, if someone else is making the plans, you know, setting the dates, getting the itinerary, buying the tickets, I guess that gets the financial part, then I'm like, great, where are we going? I don't care. Somewhere. Whereas when I was younger, it was more like, well, I think I could plan a better trip. And I kind of wanted to be more in control of it because, and again, I'm kind of speaking as I think a lot of women of my generation. Yeah. And so a lot of times what I talk about with them is like, if you do want to take control, then you are doing the work. So, and if you don't want to be doing the work, then you kind of have to let go of control too. So it's a double-edged sword. So I guess, you know, my goal with my clients would be for them to choose consciously which one they wanted, you know, what they want to do. And to, you know, again, it kind of goes back to the communication. I don't think it's an all or nothing, But if you really want to be in control, then look at, you know, how is that going to affect your partner? What's he going to do then? Are you going to be the main earner? If you want to be in control, then you're going to be doing more work. You're going to be making the money.
Right.
Then that's more on your shoulders. If you don't want to have that on your shoulders, then probably the control goes to somebody else. So there, you know, it's give and take. From this, what I'm trying to say here is that what I learned is it's not necessarily the best thing always to be the one who's in control.
Yeah,
we think that's the winner, but I don't know.
It's a lot of work.
I agree. I mean, I think communication and or having a coach, like all three of us, you know, love, relationships, finance, everything is kind of intertwined. But what you said there is right, because nobody wins. If someone really pushes to be in control, nobody wins, because there's always a battle internally. So that's good advice. Thank you, Jerica.
So I will just add on that point. I said something recently to a group of women that were kind of what both of you were saying, Jim and Jerica, about, you know, if there's a fight over money and love and like who's in control. A lot of times I've noticed a lot of type A women will bring that into the relationship. And I've always said, like, you have to kind of let that go. And I'm like, you can't be, even if you're the boss at work or at your own company or whatever you're doing, that's great. But like, nobody cares about that when you're eating dinner. like you're going to be a very not nice person to have dinner with if you bring that in and that energy in. And like you said, Jerica, like if you're always in control, that gets really boring. It gets old. I think a lot of women will probably, at least from what I've heard, have a lot of resentment towards their partner because it'll start to feel like you said, nobody wins. You're just doing all the work and they're not doing anything.
And women get burnt out. That's a huge
burnout happens fast.
but the thing is that a lot of times she's the one who caused it, which is, or I should say, I was the one who caused it. I'll just, you know, speak for myself. And that can kind of hurt. But at the same time, if you're the one who caused it, you can make a change.
Yeah.
So that's where the hope is.
Yeah. And I think it correlates to both things. So if you're always calling him, you're always texting him, you're always planning the next date, you're always thinking about what's going to happen 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and he's just like, okay, then stop doing that. Don't do anything. And see, you know, give him the option to do something. I'm sure, Jim, you can agree. Most guys love to help. They love to do something. They love to be, you know, the knight in shining armor. I'm here. What do you need? So you can't be the knight and the princess. like pick one role and just stick with it. And it's not even about gender, but just like which person you want to be, or the queen. For those of you guys that are baby and princess. But like you gotta pick the role you want and stop trying to play all cards or all sides. So that's all I'm gonna say about that one. Because I feel like if I keep going, I'd dig a hole. I'm mad because of what I said. But we are into the holiday season, and to kind of wrap things up, Jerica, you know, what else do you have planned? I don't know if you're doing any workshops, or if you are doing, you know, something special for the holiday season for your clients, or if someone right now is watching this, I can see some likes, some hearts. You guys are feeling lonely, or just thinking maybe, you know, maybe you want to find love in 2021, which is fabulous. How can they get in contact with you, and what's up next?
I would say, hey, start in 2020. We still got 30 days plus. So you can get started right now. I do have a free offer on my website, which is lovecoachjerica.com. And pretty much how I kind of introduce myself to clients is I can help you find a good man and start that forever relationship off right. And so this free offer that I have on my website is a jump start to all of that. And it kind of gives you a little bit of an organizational tool of how to get started dating. That could be online dating or in person. Most of us are online right now. Right. But how to start through this process that we talked about of dating, which is going to get you started off with that good, honest man that you're looking for, of integrity.
Like Jim. He's taken, guys. Sorry, he's married. Jim, do you have any closing remarks before I close out?
This was fantastic, Jerica. Because I'm always learning, and I love your passion. I love your story. I think this is a great podcast. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Thank you for being our guest and being on our podcast, especially since it's the first one of December.
Yeah,
remind everybody, it's almost over.
But you can still find love.
Still get better. But obviously, I want to thank everyone who's watching, as well as those that are going to be watching on the replay, as well as those listening on Spotify. I have to say just a couple things. My company, Love Talk, is doing a virtual summit. It is called The Pleasure Principle, where we talk about everything about sex. It's a very interesting conversation. There's over 7 coaches from around the country. Some of the actual recordings are recorded and some of them are live. So that is happening this weekend. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, there's still some available, as well as a few VIP tickets. And we were doing a couple of giveaways, which if you go to our Instagram at My Love Talk, the giveaways are listed. I'm not going to say what they are, but you have to definitely check that out. And we will be doing more matchmaking in 2021, where we will be starting in 2 different cities in the state of Florida. So hopefully we will be doing, definitely be doing virtual dating still, and hopefully we will get into face-to-face once the vaccine is approved. So that is coming. I wish I could make it go faster, but I can't.
Right.
But, never hurts to meet someone before you go face-to-face, at least virtually. But again, thank you so much, Jerica. And thank you, my co-host, Jim. And please join us again next week, where we have a different guest and discuss all things about love, sex, and money. Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.